All right, hello everyone. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Tamara, can you start, please?
I will start. I'll start by welcoming everybody. Thank you for joining us at the Government and Economic Policy Committee meeting. We have Justin Ezell is with us today, and Justin with the City of Concord has recently been promoted to Assistant City Manager. And I'm going to turn this over now to Justin. I'm going to say hi to Kevin Cabral is here from the Chamber of Commerce. I am Tamara Steiner. I'm on the Board of Directors and Chair of the Government Economic Policy Committee. Amanda is our admin person, our do-it-all when Melissa's not here, and do-it-all even when Melissa is here person who's running this meeting. And the topic is the new recycling food disposal, composting rules for restaurants, right? Justin, and soon to be for residents. So now that I butchered that topic, I'm going to turn it over to Justin, let him straighten it out.
Thank you, Tamara. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you to the Chamber so much for putting together this meeting for us so that we could provide some information to the business community and for everyone joining us here today. As Tamara mentioned, I'm Justin Ezell. I'm currently the Public Works Director for the city. I've been with the city since 2012, and I'll be your Public Works Director until August 6th. That's when I move into the new role in the City Manager's office, which I'm pretty excited about. And I look forward to working with all of you in that new capacity as well. Here with us tonight is a number of folks on our team. But I'm going to hand it over to Craig Blythe. He's our Administrative Services Manager here in the Public Works Department, and he'll give an introduction to the topic and the team that's here with us. So I'll hand it off to Craig. Thanks again, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Like Justin said, my name is Craig Blythe. I am the Administrative Services Manager in the Public Works Department. Just to echo what Justin said, thanks for giving us the time and allowing us to present today. We appreciate it. And what we're going to be discussing today is a new law, Senate Bill 1383. And for the most part, 1383 is around solid waste and organics diversion. It's a new law. It's a state mandate. It's not a law that Concord created or the county created. This is a statewide law that goes into effect January 1, 2022. There's certain pieces that, as the implementation rolls out, there's certain pieces that take effect January 1, and from the presentation, you'll see other important pieces and implementation dates. I do want to point out that the city, MDRR, and our solid waste consultant, R3 Consulting, which I'll introduce here in a second, we've all been working closely towards the implementation, and we'll continue to work together through all of the implementation steps moving forward. So the intent of this meeting is really just to introduce you to the topic and let you know what we know about this as of today. There's still some pieces that are undecided, and as we know more, we can share more and have answers for things. So please feel free to ask any questions you have. We'd love to answer any questions you have. So with that, I want to introduce first Rose Radford. Rose Radford is with R3 Consulting, and Rose works with cities throughout the state on solid waste matters, including recycling and organics diversion and state law compliance. We also have Sarah Davis. Sarah Davis with Mount Diablo Resource Recovery. Sarah is the Community Relations and Outreach Coordinator for MDRR, and Sarah Davis has 12 years of industry experience and has been with MDRR for the past 3 years. Sarah primarily oversees community relations and compliance along with the community outreach team. I'd like to also introduce Sal Evola, who is the Director of Environmental and Regulatory Affairs for MDRR. He is the jurisdictional contact and manager for all 5 jurisdictions. Sal's responsibilities include maintaining all governmental and regulatory compliance, permitting, franchise agreements, procurement, and all things forward planning. Sal has extensive experience in the waste and recycling industry and has been with MDRR for over 10 years. So with that, unless there's any questions, I'll pass it over to Rose, who has prepared a presentation for us.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your time again. I'd just like to echo all of those thanks. And I did prepare a presentation. I'm going to try to move through it reasonably quickly, so please take a note of any questions you might have. We'll have an opportunity to talk about any questions at the end of the presentation. And again, we have a broad range of people here to discuss whatever may come up. So just let us know. So that the topic is really talking about the requirements on businesses passed down from the state on the mandatory requirement to both recycle and compost organic waste. So this is similar to some of the laws that are in place already. You might be familiar with AB 341 and AB 1826, which already required businesses of a certain size to participate in these programs. They already exist, but the big change here is that it will make basically universal participation mandatory. So you can go to the next slide. So first we'll cover a poll, then I have some detail about the new legislation. We'll talk a little bit about the municipal code updates that we anticipate, what that really looks like in terms of your program changes, and then we'll have any questions that you might have. So next slide. So I believe that we did prepare a poll through Zoom. So Amanda, if you have that open, maybe we can pull that up. Perfect. Yeah. And then once everybody has had a chance to respond, so this is just to give us a better sense of who's in the room here. So I know what to talk about a little bit more, what to talk about a little bit less. So appreciate that. And just a little bit more context on these questions as well. Like the prior law, AB 1826, mostly applied to restaurants. And what we're really talking about is SB 1383 will have a much more broad ranging impacts to these categories of businesses and really others as well. So do you have a few responses there, Amanda?
Yeah. The poll is ending now. Okay. And would you like me to share the results?
Yeah, I think that would be great. Although it looks like it's, there we go. All right.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, great. So interestingly, there's no restaurants, but food service provider, that's going to be a significant one. And then health facilities are also covered. So I'm also interested in this other category. So maybe we can talk about that when we get to the questions and answers segment. So you can close the window. I think it pulled up on everybody's screen so it doesn't block you.
Oh, I wonder. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Let me switch. Okay, there we go. That's what happened. Okay. Now we're good.
Perfect.
All you see is the slides,
Yes.
right? Correct?
Great.
Okay, awesome.
Yes. All right. Next slide, please. So just some basic information. What are organics? What are we really talking about right now? So you're familiar with the residential program, yard trimmings, vegetative matter. That's pretty straightforward. This law adds leftover food scraps and food soil paper. And just to note that the existing program does accept those for businesses. You can call up and sign up for service for food scraps only. That's a source separated service now. So next slide. The state has decided to target this material because it's in fact a really substantial portion of their overall disposed waste, about 2/3 of what we're disposing now in California. And also there is some portion of that is actually currently edible food. And so the state has identified those portions as important because you can go to the next slide. Because organics, when it is placed in a landfill, degrades over time, and actually produces a super pollutant methane gas. So we're all familiar with that. And that's important to California, partially because of the aggressive environmental legislation, but also because California is experiencing direct impacts related to climate change now. You can go to the next slide. So this, this relates to the rest of the climate legislation. This is, sort of a descendant of AB 32. SB 1383 is an unfunded state mandate. So the state has asked the cities to implement this law. And basically it requires the provision of organic waste collection. You already have that. Outreach and education, Craig mentioned that this is just the beginning of the outreach and education efforts that the city and MDRR will be completing over the next few really years, starting now. Also to establish an edible food recovery program, which is, sort of a new piece here. I'm sure that some, and maybe many of the food generating entities in the city are already participating in some edible food recovery activity. So the city is going to be helping support you in those efforts and increase the participation. There's also an inspection and enforcement element and some other planning elements. And we know, and the state knows, that this is not free. You're already paying for garbage service. Organic service also costs some money. There's some ways that you can offset those costs by reducing the size of your garbage container. I know that that Mount Diablo Resource Recovery is a great asset in that. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, the state has made it very clear that the cost is not really an object here. They're really looking for results. Next slide. So this is the second poll. I'm curious to see whether everybody has organics or has participated in the program in the past, or what you're really doing with that material now. And if you have any questions about the terms here, I can actually highlight D. So backhaul or self-haul. In other words, if you take that material and deliver it somewhere yourself. An example would be a landscaping company that might, do landscaping service and then haul that material to a transfer station, for example.
We're still getting a few in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end it.
Perfect. Oh, great. That participation rate is fantastic. Good to see. And anybody who selected other, anything to note on that? I think you can unmute.
Yeah.
Sounds like no. It might be maybe city representatives. So that's perfect. All right, next slide.
Okay.
So those of you that are signed up for organic service, you're in compliance. Just continue to participate. And also, if you do need to participate in the edible food recovery portion, there's future slides for that. And then I'm just going to skip these others, although they are on the slide, so you can read them. If you don't have organic service, it's also pretty simple. You can contact Mount Diablo Resource Recovery, and they'll work with you to figure out exactly what that service will look like, and deliver the container. It's possible that you might not have enough space, or if you don't actually generate any organic material, we will also work with you on that. You may be eligible for a waiver. There's a waiver form that will be distributed. Mount Diablo is again the go-to people for that. So please do get in touch with them, get a copy of the form. They'll come out and look at and confirm that you really are eligible for the waiver, and then you are not required to subscribe. So next slide. So edible food recovery, this feels like a complicated one. It isn't that complicated. Basically, if you produce edible food and it's edible at the time that you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to put this in my organic material bin, but it's edible now, you're required to donate that. And you're also required to set up a contract with a edible food recovery organization. So this looks like supermarkets, grocery stores, and then a variety of other types of vendors. Those entities are required to comply by really January 1st. We can work with you in terms of deadlines, of course, but between January 1st and the end really of next year, we'd like to see contracts in place. Tier 2 begins to be covered in 2024, and that actually will cover a lot more. Restaurants, hotels, large hotels, health facilities with on-site food, large venues and events, and state facilities and local education facilities. Next slide. So recover the food, you need a contract, and then you also need to maintain records of the food organizations that you're donating to, the contracts, and what exactly you are donating. And we can work with you in terms of what that record looks like. Next slide. And we have a short list here. We are going to post more resources to help you out in finding the right people to contact. White Pony Express is a really prominent food recovery organization. You also have the Food Bank and Loaves and Fishes, which is in Martinez. Next slide. So new topics. We mentioned that this is a state law. It also requires the cities, all of the cities, to update their municipal codes to essentially adopt all of the requirements. We've already covered this in pretty good detail already. One thing I do want to point out on this slide is that the state is requiring cities to adopt penalties and to actually enforce potentially via penalties if businesses are not actually signing up for service. So this isn't something that we want to do, but this is something that the state is being pretty clear is needed. Next slide. And just briefly on program changes, you will get a letter by December 2021 giving you a little bit more information. I believe that you'll be able to get a copy of that waiver form, so that should be very easy. We'd really like to encourage people to proactively get that waiver and turn it in as soon as you can, so that we have all that information to work with. And you can contact MDRR now for a copy of that form if you need to. Next slide. So that's the end of the presentation. I think you can close the presentation so we can all see each other, and I'd be happy to take any questions. Thanks so much for your time.
I have a question for sure. I know a few years ago, maybe 5, when I worked in Walnut Creek, we got all the green bins and we had to sort all the food, and when we recycled it outside, you know, and took it out of our trash, we got a discount, but we also got penalized when we didn't do such a great job of that. What's interesting to me is the food recovery. Is that going to be mainly vegetables and breads, or it just seems like such a, who's going to make the decision if the food is recoverable or not?
That's a great question. It comes up a lot. I think for the tier 1 categories like supermarkets, we're really expecting to see more non-perishables show up, like not things that you really need to necessarily recover and then immediately deliver to be eaten the next day or that day. For tier 2, it becomes a bigger question. And I think that there's a lot of ideas about infrastructure that we can begin to support, such as there's some food recovery apps and things like that. So technology solutions to help facilitate that, which feels like a really big question and problem, really. How do you do that? So you're asking a very good question. And I'd really like to also make sure to open the floor to Sal and Sarah and the other representatives from MDR. If you have anything to add or any comments on that, please.
Thank you, Rose. I'd just like, thank you, Kevin, and thank you to the Concord Chamber. Present on this call, Garavan Enterprises, Mount Diablo Resource Recovery, there's some great partners that are here that we've worked with over the years, like the food bank in particular. So it's our goal to work with existing infrastructure that's already in place and to help those organizations as part of our outreach. So ironically enough, this is a goal that is supposed to be worked out at the county level. Right now, the counties are saying they don't know if they want to take it on when you talk to Cal Recycle. So I think there's still a lot of engagement that needs to go on edible food. But the bottom line is we're not looking to reinvent the wheel. We plan on working and assisting with our great partners that are already here, like the food bank, and as part of our outreach, helping make sure that the resources that are needed, and an app is a great idea. We'll put resources on our website. But again, the idea here is not to reinvent the wheel, and it's not prepared food, Kevin. So when you ask the question, it's prepackaged foods. It's breads, vegetables, fruit, stuff that you would see at a Starbucks, not stuff that is prepared, that is hot, or that comes off a line like that. So that's always a big misconception people have. Yeah,
I really, the thing that's interesting to me, it's excellent idea. Before that food gets prepared and wasted, I know from experience that we've tossed perfectly good heads of lettuce in the waste bin. That's just a shame, So I think it's a great component, and hopefully people embrace it.
The other outreach avenue is always the faith-based community. A lot of the churches that are in the cities that we serve already have good programs like that. So again, you just talk about the partners, the food bank, White Pony Express, the faith-based community. We want to build and help spread the information on the existing infrastructure that's out there as to not create a new burden.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Karen from the Food Bank of Contra Costa and Solano. How is everyone? One question I had in particular, I don't know if you can answer, is I sat on a Cal Recycle Zoom a few weeks ago, and they clarified that the expectation to have a model food recovery agreement on file with each store may not be required if there is an already existing overarching food recovery agreement in place. Many of you may be familiar that Feeding America has very strong relationships with 99.9% of the retailers in our city and county, which means that there's already an agreement in place. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I would defer to Cal Recycle's direction on that. I certainly think that makes a lot of sense. We wouldn't want to reinvent that. If you already have a contract in place with these businesses, they can simply say that.
Thank you.
And nice to meet you.
Can somebody translate this to the practical for me? Because I'm looking here on the effective date on this to have government requirements in places by January 1st, 2022 applies to both businesses and residents. What does this mean for residents? Just as a practical matter, how does this change behavior? What are we supposed to be doing differently beginning January 1st, 2022?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's, and you're right, this entire presentation has been really focused completely on the business side of the requirements. For residents, it gets a little bit more complex. I'd actually love to pass that off to Sal if you want to talk a little bit about your plans.
Sure. So although the law, so we have to remember, and Rose did a good job in her presentation about talking about how SB 1383 is really a stepping stone to 1826, but it really goes all the way back to AB 32, which was adopted in 2006. And there are several members of the chamber that are familiar with AB 32, especially the refineries. So this is really just a product that has really been in the works since then. What it though means, because businesses are familiar with 1826. So, if you're a business and you're compliant, you understand that. For households, for residential, the residential component rather, although the law indicates that it's supposed to start rolling out in 2022, we as a company don't plan on start rolling it out until 2023. We are able to do that because during COVID, the state, although they didn't give an extension, they said as long as you're making best faith efforts, and we have some facility expansions we're working on at our facility in Pittsburgh. We have some permitting that is going to take a little bit longer than the start of the year. So although the state wanted everyone to do what they could to stay in compliance, but eventually what it means, Tamara, I think you were the one that asked the question, is that eventually in 2023, if you're a single family household in Concord and eventually multifamily, and you have food waste, it would go into your green waste bin, or in the case of a multifamily complex, a centrally located green waste container. There are various ways to comply with the law. Some jurisdictions do what's called a wet dry, which is a 2-cart system. Some jurisdictions go to a 4-cart system. In consultation with the City of Concord and R3, we as a company felt that we would roll out a program that closely mirrors to the greatest extent possible what the citizens of Concord already have, and that is a 3-cart system. All we would be doing is expanding the definition of what would eventually go into your green waste cart. But for households, again, that will not start until 2023. So as a company, our plan is businesses in 2022, households in 2023.
Okay, there's still even with the businesses, just logistically, how does it work? You have garbage that you normally throw away. Where does it go? It goes into your green waste container or the businesses. How often is this picked up and hauled away? Because how does I'm thinking odor control, I'm thinking flies, I'm thinking of all the things that go with uncollected garbage.
Correct, and it's a great question. And we have some accounts that are, commercial accounts. So a commercial account, let's look at a restaurant. The restaurant doesn't have a green waste bin, but a restaurant would have a separate food waste bin that is food waste only. By law, that does not stay longer than a week. However, we do have several accounts that the frequency and duration of the pickup is more than once a week. But today in your household or households in Concord, your food waste is in your garbage can and it's picked up once a week. So this does not propose to delay or lengthen that by any means. You would just be separating food waste, food scraps, compostable paper, and that gets into a whole nother topic of proper labeling and what is compostable. You know, we are not going to be encouraging bags or silverware. There is silverware that is marketed as compostable. There are bags that are marketed as compostable. The facility that we haul our organics to, they really want just food waste, just truly compostable material. And we're going to do a good job with the outreach, with making it very clear as to the timing and what it is that will go into those containers. Part of this that Rose didn't hit on is the law requires over the course of a approximate 14-year period for there to be uniformed colors of carts and or lids, appropriate labels, messaging. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's not all going to happen overnight. And again, it's our job to help the businesses in Concord. You know, we don't want anyone to shoot the messenger. We didn't come up with this. The City of Concord didn't come up with it. It is something that's good for the environment. It's been underway for a long time, but we and our team is here to help. And, you know, we only mentioned Sarah Davis that is here from our company, but there's also two other individuals, Abigail, as well as Gabriella from our company. So our entire team that is here today, that is out in the field in Concord, Concord's already done a good job in getting a lot of its businesses into compliance. And that's due to the partnership with the city and the businesses that that we do outreach to. And this is just going to build upon that.
You know, my experience, Tamara, was when we did this in Walnut Creek, we had a trash compactor in the back, not like one in your house, a giant one. So when we sorted the food, it took the trash compactor. We were able to have that dumped one less time per month, and that saved us about $1,400. So I don't know. I'm sure programs somewhat similar to that will be going on, but so they monitored us, and we had green bins at all the stations in the back of the house restaurant. And then every shift change, they would be dumped into a larger green bin. And yeah, they were picked up once a week. You know, we were working with a bunch of different employees, so it wasn't perfect every time. But as people got used to it, it just became the new norm. This program sounds real similar to what we were doing. So that's really good. It's a good thing.
Quite honestly, the hardest is going to be the multifamily. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's always the hardest, as well as older locations. You know, Concord, it's very fortunate. There's, you know, on the horizon, a lot of new areas, city with the potential of being built and developed. So it's easy to design new buildings and new shopping centers the right way. What's hard is some of the older shopping centers, space constraints. And, you know, to the greatest extent possible, we work with those customers. We provide exemptions wherever we can due to that. But on new stuff, you know, it's going to have to be designed the right way. But some of the older multifamily projects do propose some of the biggest challenges because, you know, human nature is, we find that those multifamily complexes, they don't even recycle as it is, let alone now asking them to sort another commodity with food waste. So that's going to be the biggest challenge.
Well, I know that just having the little compost tin on the counter got to be problematic because of this smell. I mean, you have to make decisions about what is compostable and then what is garbage. Do you put meat scraps in your green waste?
Yes.
Is that all organic things like bones from meat or meat scraps, dairy, leftover dairy, things that sour and smell? That's the confusing part of this.
Yeah, it's anything that's organic, and it's, you know, again, it's material you were already either putting in your garbage can, or for a lot of people, and they ask the question, can they put it down their garbage disposal? You know, the law doesn't prohibit that. The highest and best use is going back to the soil. You know, the highest and best environmental return is truly back to the soil and it being composted. However, the reality is people that do have a garbage disposal, we know that individuals are going to use it, and the law doesn't prohibit that, but we will advocate what is the environmental best management practice.
Okay, and then where does all of this go? Does it go to the transfer station in Pittsburgh? Does it go to a different a different facility? Where does it go? And just chemically and biologically, what happens to it? What does it become?
Yes, ma'am. So
what's the end product?
yeah, so the I'll cut to the chase. The end product is compost, is finished compost. Where it goes is we pick up all material from Concord. Everything that we pick up, whether it's garbage, whether it's food waste that we pick up today or recyclables, go to our facility in Pittsburgh, which over the next several years will be going through a major growth and transformation to really prepare for the future. From there, for compost in particular, our material goes to one of two facilities. One is in Vacaville and the other is in the Central Valley, where they then take it to a finished compost standard. We also own in partnership a facility in Northern California that will come online in the next 4 to 5 years that will also have capacity. So our job as a contractor for the City of Concord is always ensuring that there is long-term capacity and a reservation of capacity for Concord and the growth that Concord has to contemplate in the future. So that's our responsibility. But the end product today is compost. However, with the zero emission standards of California eventually wanting no vehicle unless it's electric, we will eventually be looking at technologies that can possibly turn that waste stream through anaerobic digestion into electricity. So, we hope one day that the material that people dispose, that we pick up, will ultimately power the vehicles and the trucks that come to pick it up at the curbside. That's another hurdle that we're going to have to look at over the next 10 to 14 years. CARB is working on those regulations today. So we're not even off of the heels of implementing this, and there's already another mandate that's coming down. So, but at the end of the day, right now, this material will go to finished compost and go back to soils.
I have 2 questions that I'd like to ask about here. First, for large commercial multi-tenant properties, I'd like you to talk to what the enforcement mechanisms are for proper separation, proper collection. And second, in terms of the collection and use of the organic material to create compost, what is the disposition of that material? And to the extent that it is sold or that there is some compensation received for it, is any of that going back into the system to mitigate the cost to the person who's getting their garbage collected? So let's start with the multi-tenant property, please.
Sure. So go ahead, Rose. I'll fill in after you. Go ahead, Rose.
I was just going to say, according to the regulations, the most important portion of the large multifamily requirements is really for the property owners to be distributing educational material to their tenants, because the reality is I live in a multifamily unit. I've never seen any educational material about the recycling program. I don't live in Concord, but
I was actually talking about multi-tenant commercial properties.
Oh, multi-tenant commercial. In terms of the direct
office buildings, what's the
processes
enforcement
of
mechanism?
Enforcement. So what you're really saying is a multi-tenant property that has shared garbage service. Is that your main concern?
Yes.
It's a great question. We will be working with MDRR and talking about what that might look like. Kevin had mentioned before the Walnut Creek program, where they actually look and potentially look in the garbage stream and see if people are actively not participating in the organics program. That is contemplated in this law. I'm not going to say that we're going to come down hard doing that. But the other part of the question is then how do you identify what tenant is doing that?
Exactly.
And that's a really good question. Sometimes you can do some investigative work. I'm not a mind reader, so maybe Sarah or Sal have better solutions for that. I'll hand it over.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dirty job, but at the end of the day, in a multi-tenant situation, if you have a violator, you're opening up those bags. You're looking to see, is there something with a piece of mail on it? It's something that we do today when it comes to contamination with recycling. So, at the end of the day, it is what it is. However, we want to advocate for compliance and assistance above all else prior to enforcement. So I personally hope that our team with Sarah, Gabby, and Abigail are going to be doing such a fantastic job with messaging, marketing, outreach, and education that the enforcement will not have to be as heavy as a hand. But Brian, to your point, when it's a single container that is accepting refuse from several waste generators, at the end of the day, if there's non-compliance, all you could do is open up the bag and take a look and go in and try, or do extra education at that one building. I mean, at the end of the day, there's only so many that go into it. And it's what we do today. If we have a garbage truck that comes in, let's say that has a fire because of a lithium battery, we will do extra outreach to that route on the proper disposal of batteries. We do the same thing today with recycling. If there's one recycling truck that comes in that is grossly negligent with contamination, we take a look and we do increased outreach to that route. So it's the same thing at a smaller scale. And then the second part of your question, Brian, on the revenue from the sale of the compost. Unfortunately today, or what we've seen, and let me just step back, what we saw over the past 2 years with the recycling market and the commodities market is we realized if you look at the way garbage has been billed and how the consumer has paid for garbage, for years recycling was free because recycling ultimately paid, and the revenue from recycling covered the cost to pick it up, to process it, to get it to in markets. Today, that's not the case. There's a cost associated with recycling. Correct. That is unfortunately what the reality is with organics. With this new law, the value of the commodity simply does not cover the cost associated with picking it up, cleaning it, pre-processing it, transporting it to a compost facility, and then going to finish compost. Now, the facilities we go to, I will tell you, we have secured good long-term contracts that are extremely competitively priced for the industry. We are fortunate, and we all also are fortunate that we own shares in a facility that will have capacity. But what you're going to see in the compost markets is a flat out supply and demand. And as more cities and more jurisdictions that don't have good long-term capacity, there's going to be more volume and fewer facilities for it to go to. But to simply answer your question, organics is going to become and is becoming just like the recycling markets, where the cost that's mandated by state law simply is not covered by the value of the commodity when you go to the marketplace. It's offset, but it does not cover.
Okay. And disposition is primarily as fertilizer, agricultural supplement?
Yeah, for the most part, that's where most of that goes, unless you were looking at doing a anaerobic digestion and trying to capture the gas, and if you're trying to turn it into vehicle fuel or put it back in the pipeline or turn a gen set to do battery storage. So I mean, it's either going to go to anaerobic digestion, energy creation, or back to the Clean Healthy Soils initiative.
Thank you.
This is Caitlin with Meals on Wheels, Diablo region. I had a comment and a question. Just as as an organization that serves seniors and people who are immunocompromised, I'm really glad to hear that this is going to be focusing primarily on shelf-stable food and packaged food and not prepared food, because I know the health risks that can come from that, and food safety is always very much a concern of mine. So I'm glad to hear that while, you know, a lot of food recovery apps out there are very trendy right now, it can be a concern to especially as we hear about seniors and foodborne illness, and we've all seen what can happen with COVID. I appreciate that you guys are taking food safety as a priority and really focusing not as much on the prepared food. I had a question. You mentioned that some businesses would be exempt. Can you give some examples of that? What type of business would be exempt, and what would be involved with that?
We're really talking about the requirement to sort the organic waste material, not really the edible food material. So if you're exempt from the requirement to sort organics, that means that you're either not generating any, so there's no point in you having a container there on your site, or you don't have space to store it. So both of those rationales are allowed. Are you talking about the edible food, or did that answer your question?
No, I was just wondering, yeah, I think if you're not generating it, what would that be, like an office building? Where you're
right. So an office building somewhere that doesn't have an on-site food facility, if everybody's just getting takeout or eating at a restaurant or whatever it may be, those are examples. There are very few businesses that don't produce recycling, because recycling is everywhere, but we do acknowledge the fact that food waste is not necessarily everywhere, and we don't want to require people to have a container if they produce a banana peel every week or something like that. Sarah, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I think I usually tell people that, it's like auto parts stores or banks, right? I mean, like you're not any organic material, or at least not enough for us to send a truck out. So it's kind of those types of businesses that would be kind of off the top of your head exempt. I didn't say this before with getting our material, which I think was one of Brian's questions, is that, how do the people who are separating it, how are you benefiting from it? Right now, I can speak to how our company is doing it now. And I love telling people this because I've worked for 3 other garbage companies, and nobody does anything like this. So all of the material that we send out is processed and sent back to us, at least most of it. And most of it we donate back into our schools and to our cities. So I'd say probably about 80 to 90% of it goes to our schools in Concord, Pittsburgh, and Oakley. And then the rest of it goes into our cities to beautify our communities. So I strongly believe that MDRR will continue that, and it's something to be really, really proud of. So once you have to separate out your material, please do, because we will find a way to bring it back to our communities.
I have one question. Is most of the things we're talking about organic, is most of it generated by residences or businesses, or is it equal?
Right now it's businesses, because we aren't accepting it from residents. But so right now it's mostly, like Rose said, it's going to be your high volume restaurants and your schools. That's pretty much what we're focusing on right now, which is what 1826 has done, but 1383 will definitely expand that.
Any other questions?
Okay. Awesome.
Was
All
a
right.
great-
Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything? Nope.
I just
we're
want
all
to thank the
good?
chamber for allowing us to be here, and to thank you for inviting the city and R3. Again, we value the partnership that we have with the city. We value the partnership we have with several of the businesses who are members of the chamber, and that will continue. And this point of outreach is the first of many that our team plans on. So thank you sincerely for having us here today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the presentation. This is all, it's cutting edge stuff. This is all really exciting. The concept and the end results, and then the practicalities of making it all happen they can't happen soon enough. So I'm going to give it back to Amanda and you can wrap up. Are you sitting in the next room?
No, I'm sitting. I also work part-time at Dan Cunningham, and we do taxes and accounting and payroll and stuff. So if you guys ever need anybody, I am here for all questions. I will send out the contest list probably either tomorrow or Thursday. So if you have any more questions or anybody you really want to talk to or connect with, please don't hesitate to reach out, or you can email one of us. We'll be more than gladly to send over contact and introduction email. We do have some events coming up. We have our energy efficiency workshop with NCE and TEAA. That will be next week, Wednesday, July 28th at 11 a.m. And then we also have our 84th annual Board of Directors and Installation Awards. So Zulai Lofton was our chair, and now she will be past chair, and Mark Meyer with Mechanics Bank is now the new chair. So we're really excited. You can register for any of these events, which I will put the link down in the chat. With all of that, I think that's all we have going on in the next few weeks. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, and that's all for today.